What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I am your host, as always, Manungus Creevy, alongside my co-host, Cameron Parker-Poo and Gage Madrid. And then we added in the senior citizen, Mr. Bronco Bill, onto the panel tonight to replace the other senior citizen who is out airplane hopping out in Baltimore, I think, at work. So we have a lot of things to talk about. But before we get to that, how's everybody doing?
Doing well. We are going streaking. We are at 3 games, right? It's a 3-game winning streak. So
hang on a second. I gotta go streaking. Hold on.
Oh no.
Oh no, we don't do that. Well, he just said we're going streaking.
No, listen. Streaking is a good thing, not a bad thing. Don't turn it into a punishment, Bill.
Okay, just got it.
All right.
Yeah, its vibes are immaculate. What can I say?
Yeah, the vibes out in Denver and Broncos country are fantastic right now, but there are so many other things going on right now. Number one, Aaron Rodgers has fired Robert Saleh as the Jets head coach. You can say that the ownership did all you want, but it was Aaron Rodgers. I don't care what you say.
Did you hear that they got a huge blow up on the sideline, and during that game, and it just basically lit up his head coach, and he wanted to demote Nathaniel Hackett, and I think that's what started the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. What, excuse me?
Fire. Wasn't it fire? You want to let him
No,
go?
he said demote him.
That was fired. He wanted him fired.
He was fired?
Yeah.
I read where it was demoted. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted him just canned.
Yeah.
And I find it curious that Saleh talks about firing Nathaniel Hackett, and then Rodgers and Woody have a phone call, but it's not about Robert Saleh. And then the next day, Saleh gets fired.
Yeah.
Even though the Jets have like the number 2 defense in the country. But that's fine. He's horrible. We need to get rid of him.
You watch way too much college football. You say they have a top 2 defense in the country.
Well, they do.
Do you think though that that the loss to the Broncos and then followed by the loss to the Vikings was more than the owner could stand, or do you think there was a bunch of underlying things?
It is very clear that the Broncos loss, not the Vikings loss, was the one that shook them. Actually, I think it came from Woody Johnson's mouth today.
Wow.
Where they said that the Denver Broncos lost, the loss shook the entire organization. So that is like from their mouth, like it shook the entire organization up.
Well, it wasn't like the Broncos had to come from way behind where the Jets. It was just it was a combination of things. You had the missed field goal by both teams, but the weather played a big part. So I don't really know, other than missing that field goal, that would have shook it up, unless I'm missing something.
Well, with the Jets, it was just bad offensive execution. It was classic Nathaniel Hackett football where pre-snap penalties were putting them behind the chains before the ball was even snapped. So many false starts, it was ridiculous. Then you had miscommunication between Aaron and his receivers. And to an extent, of course, that's on Aaron and the receivers, but it's also on Nathaniel Hackett as the overall overseer of the operation to make sure that stuff doesn't happen. And just all that lack of execution, and it felt like fingers were starting to get pointed. And I feel like the wrong guy got fired here. It's very apparent that the guy who should have been fired was Nathaniel Hackett, because the defensive side of the ball for the New York Jets has been fantastic. Robert Saleh is beloved in the locker room, and the fact that he didn't even get to address his players after he got fired is very, very tough to swallow, I would imagine.
Yeah, didn't they escort him out the building?
That's what the report says. Yeah,
I was gonna say they escorted him out, and he didn't even meet with the team to address them that he was leaving. Like, that is the definition of a toxic and poverty franchise right there. I mean, like, that description there is the reason why players basically, find out on social media, right? Like, you were hearing so much of that with the Chargers, like, in some of the case, I think it was with John Pagano, right? Like, Pagano. Like, it was just like people were finding out, like, coaches were being fired. Like, that's exactly with how things shake out. And it's really unfortunate that you can't even address the team and be like, hey guys, I'm sorry of how all this thing unfolded. This is where we're going with the direction. But no, they decide to escort him out. And I think that the even more toxic side of it was they didn't even escort Adam Gase out of the building. Like, so they escorted him out, but they never even escorted him to the players to even have a meeting. It's beyond asinine.
It's the definition of getting shit canned.
Yeah, and like there's maybe 3 teams, including the Jets, that are this bad. I mean, you got the Jets, which ownership, front office is the problem. I think that's pretty well established. You got the Jets, you've got the Browns, and you've got
Jacksonville.
Yeah, Jacksonville. I think that's about
Tennessee.
it. You think
Tennessee.
so? Well, but okay, but Tennessee's
Carolina.
more of a head coach thing, though, right? Well, that's the one I was going with, Carolina.
Yeah.
Tennessee's
Like,
really a head coach and a quarterback issue.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at teams that are like ownership, front office issues, I think there's 3.
Okay, yeah. From that perspective, yeah, you definitely think the Jets, Carolina.
Because like, what other team would do that to a coach besides the Jets? Well, the Browns, Panthers,
Maybe.
like those would be the teams that do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, takes over as interim head coach. Since they're such big fans of Hackett, why didn't Hackett take over?
You should rephrase that. Since they're such big friends of Aaron Rodgers, why isn't Nathaniel
Right?
Hackett? I
Even
think
though
that's
the offense is the problem. I mean, wait, no, it's not. They might come after me now.
well, I was going to say. That's what they would, say is if they're firing Robert Saleh, it means that the defense is the problem, not
Right.
the offense. But the number one takeaway is like this is very much like LeBron James with the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, this is very much like Aaron Rodgers is controlling everything. Like he is controlling everything of that organization, whether Woody Johnson agrees or not. It is through the ears of Aaron Rodgers and his decision making, and whether Nathaniel Hackett stays is besides the point. He did stay for now. Doesn't he might last not one more week, but he's here, and he's here because Aaron Rodgers wants him.
Now here's sorry, Bill. I got 2 questions for you involving the Jets. 1, do you still think Devontae Adams wants to go to the Jets? And 2, what does this do for the Hassan Reddick saga?
So I think Devontae would still want to go to the Jets. I think Aaron Rodgers is the main selling point there. I think that the way Aaron's going to spin it and sell it to Devontae is, we got rid of the problem. We got rid of Robert Saleh. Saleh was the only thing that was going to hold us back from winning a Super Bowl. Come on over, buddy. I don't think that this is going to hinder Devontae whatsoever.
Yeah. No.
I don't think this hinders Devontae. But as far as Hassan Reddick's concerned, Woody Johnson spoke to the New York media today, and he addressed the Hassan Reddick situation, saying that we want to welcome him back with open arms. Just get in the car, drive down I-95, and come over, buddy. And I responded in our group, or actually it was in a different thread. I responded to that. Well, then open up the checkbooks, buddy. Open up the checkbooks, Woody.
Yep.
So key takeaway from that is Gage is cheating on us.
That was with the syndicate group chat. Absolute booty cheeks.
Can't be doing that. So yeah, then you go from the Jets to the Saints, who's coming up on our schedule within the next few weeks. Derek Carr looks like he's expected to miss multiple weeks, and there's the possibility that Spencer Rattler could be starting.
Yeah, that's at least where it was trending. I mean, I think there's a possibility you still might see both Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. But yeah, I mean, they do like both of them. Obviously, Jake Haener didn't exactly have the greatest showing in the 2 minutes, on Monday Night Football. But at that point, the case was closed. The Chiefs were winning that game, and so but they also love Rattler. I mean, I think that there was like a reason why Rattler was kind of like, one of the fascinating people that were like, in this class, because he's got it all. He's got the arm talent. He's got the ability to move around, and, he feels like the right kind of guy you would want to have be the heir apparent to Derek Carr. He's just kind of been banged up a little bit, and so hopefully, he can get back to being healthy. But it's not ideal for the Sean Payton Bowl on Thursday night. I mean, you want to have all your players there for Thursday, and there's no bigger than, Derek Carr on that Thursday night.
Yeah, but what I love about that is the fact that we catch a break. And I mean, Kamani in the neighborhood and whatnot calls me Hitman Bill. I'm not advocating for Derek Carr not to be there, but I mean, well, maybe okay. But injuries do happen, and that everybody says it's the next man up. Do the Broncos catch a break? Absolutely. It's still going to be an emotional game for Sean Payton, and then I still don't know how he's going to handle that. It's going to be very emotional, but hopefully, the Broncos end up on the winning side of that.
Yeah. And as far as just like the matchup between the coaching staffs, this is about as even keel as you could get, because everybody knows everybody with these coaching staffs. Mm-hmm. Sean Payton and Dennis Allen practiced against each other, literally the chess match between those two guys every single day in practice. So they know each other's tendencies. They know what each guy is going to try to do to stop the other one. And then additionally, Clint Kubiak is familiar with a lot of the personnel here in Denver, because he was at one point the offensive play caller for the Denver Broncos in 2022. He was officially the quarterback's coach, but there's so much familiarity with everybody on this coaching staff. Pete Carmichael, the former Saints offensive coordinator, as of last year, is now in Denver. He's a Broncos offensive assistant. So there's so much of that I feel like it's kind of a level playing field as far as strategy and who has the advantage over who, just in that regard.
Yeah.
And then when you add in the fact that Sean Payton is going to be emotional, they're going to do a tribute to him. And just like Peyton Manning, when he went back to Indianapolis, he wasn't the same in that game because he was so emotional. I hope that doesn't happen, but that could be a trap game just because of that, connection.
It's a primetime game too. I mean, it's a Thursday night game, and it's a short week. So they got to be on their P's and Q's. There's no doubt about it. I think that's one of the things, that's where I think I would at least feel like Sean has the leg up. Necessarily in that regard, but to kind of go back to what we had now, obviously the team that they faced last year is a far more superior team and everything, but you gotta say for what it was, and that was he faced a protege in Dan Campbell, and it didn't exactly turn out all that great, and so it's kind of something maybe just under this beneath the scoreboard and outside of it that might be worth following, that maybe Sean might take this one a little bit more serious, knowing the fact that the Dan Campbell game was one where he kind of got boat raced a little bit. So he doesn't want that to happen specifically in that dome.
Yeah, Bryce giving a shout out. What's up, Bryce? I'm not even going to try the last name because there's many different ways you can say it, and I'm just going to end up saying mayonnaise, and then I'm going to end up calling you Hellman's for the rest of forever. So we're just going to leave it the way it is, and we're not going to mess with the last name because that's
what you just did.
No, because I didn't try to actually pronounce the name. I just said mayonnaise because it's easier for me to say.
Okay, Mundungus Levis.
So we go from I like that. We go from a potential rookie starter to another rookie that's going to be starting. Drake May is going to be starting for the Patriots. So we could have 5, 6 rookies.
Yep. It seems like you're probably going to be looking at, and of course, it's not the 5. It is not your typical 5, of like the first round quarterbacks. In large part, obviously, due to what the Atlanta Falcons did. But yeah, Spencer Rattler, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix. I mean, it's going to be in 5 rookie quarterbacks, and I think specifically for Drake May. Obviously,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know I didn't either till last minute.
I love.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mute yourself, Bill.
Oh, sorry. I need to mute myself. Hang on.
I love the idea of of starting rookie quarterbacks early, but I will say though, just it feels like you're just throwing Drake May into a really rough situation, specifically with the Houston Texans game. They're a playoff contender, the Texans are, and the Patriots offensive line is just awful, Gage. And so it's just like you're literally trial by fire, throw them out there, hope and pray you survive.
God, it's horrid. Horrid.
Oh my
Worst
gosh. Anyways,
offensive line in a football. And this is a situation where I was advocating for Drake May to sit all year because the situation, the lack of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, having a defensive-minded head coach, the god freaking awful offensive line, and you've got a guy who can take that beating in Jacoby Brissett for a whole season. There is nothing that's going to benefit from Drake May starting. It's got the potential to be a Bryce Young situation.
Yeah.
With how bad this Patriots team is, how bad his supporting cast is, you've got a really strong chance to wreck your young quarterback's confidence.
Yeah.
You might be in a trance. You never know.
All right, so going from that rookie quarterback to our own, we'll go ahead and dive into the Denver Broncos and the absolute domination that we just laideth upon the Raiders this weekend. It wasn't even close. Like the first two drives, we were down 10-0, and then we scored 34. So they can eat it. PS2 has 2 interceptions in the game. Riley Moss, as some people call him, the crackerback, which is like the greatest word ever. I love that. Crackerback. He gets his first interception. The first interception by a light-skinned brother I'm never saying that again. In the last 20 years. It was all around the defense we expected, but we surprisingly got more offensive drives than I thought we would get. My one thing, and this is the only negative that I have with the game, is it still looked like we had 2 different offenses. One in the first half, one in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, why and how do we fix it?
Gage, you were at the game. Why don't you lead everything off?
Sure. We definitely saw the Broncos offense on their first couple of drives struggle to get anything going. They just kind of struggled to get into a rhythm. And then the Raiders had that plucky play there with Brock Bowers at the beginning to go up 7-0. They kick a field goal on their second drive. But Denver was able to get points finally on their third offensive possession. Bo Nix let them down. They kicked a field goal. I think we started to see the run game play a little bit more of a factor as the game started to move forward. The Broncos were not panicking going down by 2 scores, which was really huge. They stayed calm. They stayed to the course. They didn't completely abandon what they were trying to do, and it worked for them. And they just had to stay patient with it for things to finally start clicking, and they were able to do so. Then the Raiders went down. They were about to go back up 17-3. Pat Surtain gets that 100-yard pick six, and it changes the entire momentum of the game. Denver ties it there, and that's when you started to see the offense play more free. That's when you started to see the defense really catch fire, and Pat Surtain got the other interception. Riley Moss with the interception as well. After that pick six, the defense really shut down the Raiders' entire offense, and that allowed our offense in turn to exploit that and turn it into their most consistent, stable production this entire year.
I think there were 3 points.
Oh, do you?
There
3
are
points, but he's not going to give them to us.
3
What?
points.
You froze. You're like, I've got 3 points.
Did I freeze?
Yeah.
I didn't see. Okay. Anyways, 3 points. So the first one was and I've seen this all year with Sean Payton. they start out slow. They do these little dinks and dunks, and they do these run things that just don't work. And then all of a sudden in the first half, PS2 comes up with the big play that just changed everything. Then Sean Payton changes the type of play calling in the second half. They make adjustments. I don't know why they don't do that from the beginning. I don't know why they try and go small ball, to use a baseball vernacular because it's the playoffs. Why they go small ball as opposed to just coming out and just, doing things that would you stop that? It's not me. Well, it's my face that you
actually that is you. Like if you look closely,
that's
your face, sir.
Yeah, but it's superimposed. I've never worn. Do I look like I have those kind of shoulders?
Yes.
Come on, man. Anyways, do you guys agree with that? Do you think it's threefold or?
I mean, I think we all agree that the offense does need to perform a little bit better in the first half. But I think that I think the reason why you see some of the short game in the beginning is because you want to get Bo comfortable in the beginning. Like you want to see him, be able to operate, and I think that it's also twofold in the sense that, I actually don't think Bo was actually as bad in the first half than, maybe, people were even saying. I think, again, it was the unfortunate, nature of where we are with the wide receiver room, where just they don't have the people that are just separators. You know what I mean? With that wide receiver room. And so I think that specifically, I thought he was fine, but he was exponentially better in that second half because of what we saw with him getting comfortable with, the short game and the screen game. And actually, the screen game specifically really started to get going at that latter part of the first half. And so I think that, and that's one thing where I think, the offense might actually have found some ground a little bit in that screen game.
Let me ask you guys, all three of you, Cam and Gage, particular, only because I've already talked to Madungus about this. What do you think about the blow up on the sideline with Bo Nix and Sean Payton? That was over the play where he threw the ball to Troy Franklin and it was incomplete, and he changed off of the play. From my understanding, from what I read, he changed off of the play, and so what do you think about that, huh? Or he
switched it from one side to the other.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, he flipped it. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think about that blow up? Does that remind you of last year with Russell Wilson?
No, it does not.
Okay.
No, it does not. And I loved it more.
Nice.
Okay. Look, if you want to be in Sean Payton's house, not doghouse, but you want to be in Sean Payton's house, you better be able to, basically have some fight in you. And I'm going to call it for what it is. Russell Wilson was a deer in the headlights too often when Sean Payton would challenge him. Bo Nix, the moment that, he flipped back and he challenged Sean, I think was the moment. And to quote Terran Armstead, he became Sean Payton's favorite football player. I mean,
wow.
when you basically go out and you basically and at that moment challenge your head coach and then play better after that and back it up, you not only endear yourself to your head coach, you endear yourself to the entirety of your teammates. And it's specifically a teammate that you went to school with at Oregon. So, I mean, there was some miscommunication, and maybe there was a way where he wanted to hit Mims on the crosser, and instead he took the shot play to Troy Franklin. But if Troy Franklin catches that ball, we're not having that conversation. And frankly, we're not having a blow up on the sideline, or we're not having, a conversation about Russell Wilson this, Bo Nix this, no, they scored a touchdown possibly on the play to Troy Franklin. And you're talking about a completely different game with Bo Nix statistically, in a game where he probably has almost 300 yards of passing yards versus, 200 and, was it 220 or something like that. So, I mean, it's a completely different shakeup.
Yep. I mean, Drew Brees went on the Colin Cowherd show, and he said that Sean Payton loves it when his players challenge him and hold him accountable. It makes him a better coach. And Bo Nix literally heard that advice from Drew, and he held Sean Payton accountable there. And it was really cool to see. I think that Bo Nix has that competitive fire, almost a little Phillip Rivers in him, where he demands perfection. And if it's not perfect, then you are going to get the business. He doesn't care if it's a player, if it's a coach. We saw on the sideline Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and the wide receivers having that little powwow because clearly the execution has not been there from the wide receivers. That's shown up on tape. It's shown up in the numbers. And Sean Payton and Bo Nix are demanding perfection there, and they're quite frankly not getting it. So they're still winning football games despite all these kinks and mess ups on offense. They're still finding a way to win football games. And in the case of the Raiders and the Buccaneers game, win them in dominating fashion. So just imagine where this team could be when they start to work out some of these headaches and kinks on the offensive side of the ball. And that will come with time. These are growing pains. That's what happens when you have a rookie quarterback. That's what happens when you're trying to basically install a new offense, because this is year one of the real Sean Payton offense.
Yeah, and
last year was a watered down version for Russell Wilson because Russell couldn't run the real Sean Payton offense. This year, it's balls to the wall, full blown Sean Payton offense, and it takes time to learn a very complicated offense like that.
Yeah, and what we're seeing right now is the leadership, the right kind of leadership that we've been missing with the Broncos. Like you have Bo Nix going right back at Sean Payton, then you have him going and yelling or talking with the wide receivers, and you got him talking to the offensive line. Like that's the kind of leadership we've been looking for. And I think that the game that we saw on Sunday and the games we've seen this season, you're looking at Bo Nix's basement, like his floor. I think this is the worst he can do. And if this is the worst that Bo Nix can get, we're in great shape.
We're in phenomenal shape. And I think that what we should really take pride in is what you are starting to see a little bit in these 3-game winning streaks is you are seeing some significant growth in a player that, look, we were talking a little bit about, the cases of the short passes in the first half. Well, there were some cases where still in that first half, Bo was able to take a shot to little Jordan Humphrey on about a 20-yard pass over a couple defenders. So, I mean, he's getting to the point, right now where the aggressiveness is getting a little bit better. He's getting more and more aggressive, which is something you want to see over the course of a season and over the course of his confidence. You want to make sure that, he's making those correct reads, which he, it seems like he's making some of those correct reads, minus maybe a few here and there in this 3-game winning streak, but he's being a little bit more aggressive in some of those reads a little bit, specifically in that second half, and specifically the moment he challenged Sean Payton. The moment you were able to see some of that was the moment you're seeing some of those big plays in the middle of the field, down the field. Cortland Sutton, that beautiful drop pass that he did to Josh Reynolds for his first touchdown, of the campaign. So, I mean, like, you're starting to see it incrementally be a lot better in that passing game. And I think that by season's end, you will be talking about a completely different Bo Nix.
What do you guys think about Bo Nix running? I mean, he's running head first, and I understand the guy wants to know what.
Well, only when he's reaching for the first down. Other than that, he slides.
Right, but do you want him to run?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Part of his game.
Run.
Okay.
Yeah, he is athletic. It's one of his biggest attributes is his ability to make some defenders miss, kind of weave his way through would-be tacklers. We saw that on the one run in particular where he got the first down, that he kind of lowered his shoulder, dipped and weaved. That's something that I think is, you don't want it to be like something he leans on as the first element of his game, but it's an asset that's there if he has to use it, essentially.
No, I get that, but the problem I have is, what if he takes that one shot? And I mean that's with every quarterback.
But that could happen when he's standing in the pocket, not moving.
Yeah,
true. And
frankly, you are more susceptible if you are a stationary quarterback and you're taking a huge shot than you are, like I gotta say, like, it's just,
I like the Bill, you're too old one right there.
It's just
thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it.
It's more about the case of like and I think this is where it for me with Bo Nix, it's actually very encouraging because you're seeing the development from the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
The moment he hits that stride with the passing game is the moment I think you really start to see him really be that much more comfortable with the way he wants to use his legs, specifically kind of like what we saw to a degree in that Tampa Bay game, where it was just like kind of all clicking to a certain degree. And I think that, that's where you will see some of those games where he's going to have maybe 250 yards passing, 3 touchdowns and some rushing touchdowns and some large games to where he's going to end up having, maybe 60 to, 70 yards of rushing sometimes in games because of how effective, he is at running the football.
Yeah. When we sit here, hold on. So we sit here and we talk about the pass that Troy Franklin dropped, but instead of looking at the drop, look at the throw. Mm-hmm. It was perfect. Yeah. Exactly where it's supposed to be. And we also talk about the receivers and how they're having issues getting open. That's what Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims are for. Like Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims have got to figure it out because that's what they're for. They're those speed guys that can get behind the defense and get open and make those big catches. Cortland Sutton, I'm sorry, he's not that speed guy on the outside. Like he'll go up and get a 50-50 ball, but it's going to be a contested ball. He's not going to be open. You need to keep Cortland Sutton more on the inside, like the 10 to 20 yard routes, on the slants, on the curl-ins, and let Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims go. But they got to figure it out. Like there's reasons why they're not on the field. And so from my point of view, when you look at what we have with the wide receivers, I think they need to try to make a trade for a wide receiver before the trade deadline's up.
Well, we never should have gotten rid of Tim Patrick.
There's a guy that I just dipped out of the podcast for earlier.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I brought it up.
Yep. He might be the guy in A.T. Perry, who the Broncos signed to the practice squad. 6'4". I can't recall how much he weighs, but he's a bigger bodied wide receiver, and he runs a 4.4 40. I'm looking to see what his weight is.
To be honest, I have no idea who that is.
He's 205.
205? Okay. So bigger body dude. He's got a big catch radius. He kind of could be that perfect, ideal blend of size, catch radius, and straight vertical line speed that this offense has really been missing.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that I think really is going to benefit this team is I think that where I think Cortland really is really beneficial for this team is the nitty-gritty. Like, I mean, if you need a really, a key play on third down or something, I mean, you can be able to turn to Cortland and rely on him a little bit on that third down, regardless if it's a 50-50 ball or if it's a – so I think that Cortland – that's why I think come the end of the season, we might be having a very different conversation about Cortland Sutton and his future in Denver. And I mean that positively. But A.T. Perry, one of the biggest things, too, is he's a yards after catch guy. And between you add little Jordan Humphrey and you add A.T. Perry to this mix, and frankly, not to mean Franklin, but Franklin. I mean Franklin in the sense of in terms of a yak guy. But I think Franklin has a lot of yards after catch with him too. And so I think that, you can absolutely look at this where maybe they don't make a trade for a guy like, an Amari Cooper or, someone like that in the wide receiver room. However, I kind of changed the conversation a little bit because the conversation does need to be steered a little bit to a very surprising person who was inactive or not surprising, depending on, how you've been following the Broncos season. And that is Greg Dulcich was inactive. So my question now becomes, because of the fact he's been inactive,
Kyle Pitts.
I don't think they want to be trading for a wide receiver at that point. You probably are going to be turning your attention to some of those tight ends, guys like David Njoku, Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews.
I didn't even think about Njoku.
Mm-hmm.
How old
yes
is he?
To Njoku and yes to Andrews.
Njoku's got to be in his mid-30s, though, right?
No.
Oh, no.
Really?
I don't think so. I think he's only like 28.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me look.
Well, who's going to take Dulcich? You just going to cut him?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they cut him in the next 2 weeks, actually.
Wow.
I mean that.
28.
Well, and okay, so you look at and this is one of the other things I had. Like, let's say that Greg Dulcich doesn't work, right? Like, you can still look back at like George Payton's picks, not all, but the ones that are still on the team since 2021. You got PS2, Javonte Williams, Quinn Miners, Nick Benito, Greg Dulcich, maybe, Marvin Mims, Drew Sanders, Riley Moss, Bo Nix, and Jonah Ellis. Like, that's a list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But do you guys think he missed on Dulcich, or you just think that Dulcich just doesn't have the capability or the body?
Dulcich is like reminds me of Jake Butt
without the blocking.
Yeah.
and the last name of Butt.
Yeah, I think that Dulcich, it's kind of a mixture of both, honestly. The fact that the dude couldn't stay healthy didn't help his case, but I think that he's very deficient in some of the things that you ask him to do as a tight end. Like we said, he can't block to save his life. He doesn't really have the size to play as an inline tight end. If the Broncos maybe were to accept that fact and move him to wide receiver, I think he might actually have a bit more of a chance. It's the same thing with Kyle Pitts, actually. I think if the Falcons moved Kyle Pitts to wide receiver and gave up on this tight end crap with him, then he might actually be able to really reach his potential in the NFL. You see these really deficient blockers who are good athletes. These teams try to play them at inline tight end, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for Greg Dulcich, it's just like he's just like Gage is saying, like he's not a willing blocker, and I think that to the other degree of that, he's not been able to catch the ball, and so like you can trust him, in doing with what it is that he's just doing, but I just think that like it's one of those things like you need to also be able to make the impact on the football field from the hands and everything, and he's not. And and I actually propose a very unique twist, for this, and that is actually a player who is currently on the roster. He's actually got a little bit of some wide receiver, tight end versatility to him. He's arguably maybe their best yak weapon on the roster right now, and that would be a little Jordan Humphrey. Maybe you kind of use him a little bit at times, a little bit in line, and maybe he's your Kyle Pitts, a very cheap version of cheaper version of a Kyle Pitts. And like you work with that. I think that the little Jordan Humphrey, discussion and maybe him being somewhat of that replacement, I think is something that I wouldn't absolutely entertain.
And he's a willing blocker. He is a very good blocker.
So Johnny's got a question. He says, if you had to pick between a playmaking wide receiver or a playmaking tight end in free agency, would you prefer to sign T. Higgins or Mark Andrews? Higgins.
Higgins. Yep. No doubt.
Hot take, Andrews. I think that
really?
Yeah, I think that this offense is starving for a reliable, true starting inline tight end. And I think Mark Andrews could do that. He has dealt with some injuries the past few years, so that is something to take into account. But I think that this team could find a wide receiver in the draft or a cheaper option in free agency than a T. Higgins and still get reliable production. But tight end is one of those positions where it's a little bit harder to find those kind of guys in the draft. I'd rather get a proven veteran who isn't going to cost as much money or even close to as much money, quite frankly, as T. Higgins. So I'm going Andrews all the way personally.
Yeah, and sorry, Cam, we talk about like all the wide receivers and how they're starting to play a little better. We're starting to get some offensive production, but I still don't think we have a number one wide receiver. Courtland Sutton is not number one. He's not.
That I mean, no, you're preaching to the choir, but it's just like I just think that to piggyback a little bit off of what Gage is saying, like the tight end position is one that you don't really garner a lot of initial stuff right away, and I mean. The funny enough, the argument you can actually make is Mark Andrews' counterpart in Baltimore, which would be Isaiah Likely, because he kind of hit the ground running a little bit with Baltimore, and it kind of just started the decline a little bit of Mark Andrews. But I think that for Andrews, like you put him here, you don't maybe necessarily need to make him a willing blocker, but you're talking about a very good space eater between like the middle part of the field, which we all know that is kind of something that Bo Nix really works well for. And then to that point, this is, another point with the wide receiver is there's a little bit more of a higher success rate when it comes to young draft wide receivers, specifically first round wide receivers and even beyond, that come in and can be very dominant wide receiver ones the moment they hit the field. So if you have that opportunity to draft a guy like a Luther Burden, or a Terratone McMillan, or maybe even to kind of shoot it from the hip a little bit locally, and Torrey Horton, a little bit, if you're able to, look in, to something like that. I think that there are guys, absolutely. I mean, what is it? Egbuka from Ohio State is certainly one that I would want to be throwing out there. And I mean, there's others too. I mean, like certainly, we're all praying that Ryan Williams can declare, but that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, and then to the T. Higgins point itself, are we really all that confident that T. Higgins is going to be a wide receiver one? I mean, to a certain degree, it's the argument that kind of is somewhat made for Brandon Ayuk. Do I think Brandon Ayuk is a wide receiver one? I do, but he's in an offense that is, for one, wide receiver one is Jamar Chase, and he's really never been given the opportunity to be a wide receiver one. So are we really all that confident in terms of throwing all that, huge money and that huge bag to a guy that we don't know firmly that he's going to be our wide receiver one?
Good points. Good points. Would you take an Ayuk on the Broncos? But what would you have to give up?
He's not. He already signed his extension. But I mean, I still absolutely.
That's right. He did.
I still very much would take a wide receiver one though, because like if you add in a Mark Andrews though, and you bring in a guy like just for sake of argument, you trade up and you get a Travis Hunter. I mean, like spatially that is. You're talking about a really good offense, that could be able to move, and you can do a lot of different things with Travis Hunter at that point, both in the screen game and even the middle part of the field, to where you can be so creative with him as a wide receiver that I think that, he can be a very dominant wide receiver one. And then, every once in a while, kind of, be in some dime packages for you, on the football field in terms of as a corner. So I just think that like they need both. Mm-hmm. But like I think that immediately right now, and as the season is progressing, it seems like tight end would be like the more immediate need.
Yeah. I mean, the name that caught my eye from like draft guys is Torrey Horton. I think that he could be somebody who would be available like in that mid to later first round where it's looking like the Broncos are going to end up picking. I think Torrey Horton could be an excellent fit here, and a local product who, if you're a CU fan, you probably don't love him, but if you're a CSU fan, Torrey Horton has been a dynamic player for them. Travis Hunter, I just don't think it's realistic. And also, I think Travis Hunter plays corner in the NFL. I think that he could make some Pat Surtain money if he plays corner in the NFL. But also, he could make Justin Jefferson money if he plays receiver too. So that's a really tough conversation to have there, what position he's actually going to play. But Torrey Horton out of CSU, yeah, big time. I think that I think you can even address tight end in free agency, bring in a cheap veteran receiver, or at least cheaper, like maybe a DeAndre Hopkins. That could be an interesting addition. Bring in a Torrey Horton. You've still got Cortland Sutton. You've still got Mims and Franklin on the roster. That sounds like a complete core of weapons for Bo Nix to work with heading into his sophomore season, and that could be huge for the Broncos.
Yeah. So we kind of go from a weakness on, I wouldn't say like a full weakness, but a weaker point of the roster in the wide receivers. And we go to a now potential weakness on the offensive line because of some injuries that we've got going on. So everybody was excited about Palchevsky. He is now out. I don't know for how long. Did he get put on IR or no? Not yet?
Not officially, but I think it's coming.
So it sounds like he'll be gone for 4 weeks. We still have McGlinchey out for another 2.
He's on week.
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Pert starting on the right side.
Actually, you don't know. They made a signing today, bringing back an old friend,
Cam Fleming.
Fleming, and I would not be surprised if he's actually, called up to the 53-man roster, and you actually have the opportunity where you kind of see not Frank Crum, but you see Matt Peart and Cam Fleming kind of duke it out a little bit as far as on that right side. So I think that you kind of see a bit of a competition mid-game and during the games, if you will, for Peart and Fleming, and kind of go with the hot hand. And I will say though, Peart for that end of the first half, and then kind of like into the second half and finishing the rest of the game, he was not bad. I mean, he's going to deal with what it was with Max Crosby, but for all intents and purposes, that was about as good of a game that you could ask for. And he was really good as a run blocker, really, really pretty solid in terms of a pass blocker. So I think, overall, I'm fairly confident that there specifically with Zach Strief and the confidence myself has in him that he's going to be able to coach up these guys like Fleming and, Peart and really get them to play.
And I think that Frank Crum could possibly take Peart's old role as the jumbo offensive lineman that comes in when they want to run those 6 offensive lineman packages, when they really want to go downhill and run the ball. I think Frank Crum is really solid as a run blocker. It's pass protection where dude is super duper raw, and I don't think the Broncos trust him in that role. But I think that just like Cam said, we could see a scenario where we've got Cam Fleming and Matt Peart duking it out there at right tackle up until McGlinchey comes back, and then we could have Frank Crum possibly step in that jumbo tackle role.
Yeah. Well, what about on the left side? You got Garrett Bowles. I mean, do you guys think he's reverting back to what he was yesteryear with all the penalties and stuff in crucial situations too?
That's where else I was going to go, because we also saw Wattenberg and Bowles go off the field at points in the Raiders game. Do we have any updates on them?
They finished for Wattenberg didn't finish, but Bowles did finish the game. And it seems like everything's okay with Bowles from the health side of things.
Darn.
Not with the mental.
I mean, sorry.
But I will say though, I don't expect the Broncos to do much with that left side. I mean, you already are kind of seeing some patchwork done with that right side, so I would not be wanting to mess with specifically that left side, because then you are talking about Cam Fleming specifically coming in and being, the left tackle. But to answer your question though, Bill, he is reverting back. The problem is just based obviously with where they are and the depth and everything that we're seeing. You kind of just have to leave it as it is. And, you hate to use a Band-Aid for a player who's been there at such a long point, and with the team. But right now he's basically a Band-Aid right now. And he's a Band-Aid left tackle that they're basically using. And, until after this season, that's when we can have a conversation about, whether or not, Garrett Bowles will in fact be a Denver Bronco again, which in my eyes, he is not going to be a Denver Bronco.
Wow.
In 2025.
Okay.
Yep. So Johnny asked a question, kind of going back to when we were talking about Bo's floor. What do we predict to be his ceiling, and do we have a QB comparison? Now, QB comparisons that we give do not mean that we think he's going to be that player. Okay? So if somebody says Manning, we don't expect him to be Peyton Manning. Okay?
Gage, why do you go first?
I think that as far as player comparisons for like active quarterbacks, Brock Purdy is somebody who could easily be a player comparison. And this is a good thing. His ability to extend plays with his legs, his ability to throw with anticipation, timing, and touch. We're seeing issues with the wide receiver play that I think are really messing that up. But Brock Purdy is a guy that you could easily win a championship with his level of play. I think that could be your ceiling for Bo Nix. Or if you want to go with, like, I don't think that they're similar players, but as far as like ceiling levels, maybe like a Kirk Cousins or something like that. I don't think Bo Nix is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but he could easily be a top 10 quarterback. And the Broncos could go far for a very long time with top 10 quarterback play, especially with a Sean Payton calling the shots.
Or even a top 8, because, I mean, he's an MVP candidate, Brock Purdy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me interject something here, Gage. You said that No? Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
hey, Gage, anyways, what you said was you think he could be a top 10 quarterback. Where would you place, and I know you said don't compare him to Manning or Elway or
But we're going to do it anyway.
Or Tom Brady.
I didn't say not to.
But the point I'm trying to make is how many championships can you win with the top 10? Brock Purdy hasn't won a championship, and I know he's still young in the league. I get that. But my question is, if you're not comparing him to Manning or Elway or Brady, where do you place him as far as championships? Elway won 2, Manning has won 1, Brady, we all know, has won 7.5 or 70 or whatever.
7.5.
I think that if the situation around him is perfect, he could easily win 2-3 championships. It just depends on the team he's got around him. I think that he's got that in those intangibles as well, the leadership, the moxie. We saw that come out on Sunday. Those are things that can take you very far in the NFL. Does he have the strongest arm in the NFL? No, he does not. Is he the most athletic quarterback in the NFL? No, he is not, although he is an underrated athlete. But at the end of the day, he's got those intangibles that you can't teach, and that is huge. And the fact that he is really the only rookie quarterback out there that's seeing playing time that has an offensive-minded head coach, that's another thing that we have to stress here is that Sean Payton, if he figures out exactly what Bo Nix does well, gets him in a rhythm each and every single week, this could be Sean Payton's next Drew Brees. I think that Bo Nix is more athletic than Drew Brees, but because that's why I'm not making that direct comparison. But I think the ability to throw with anticipation, timing, and touch, absolutely. There are some Drew Brees-esque qualities there. I just think that Bo Nix is a more athletic player and is better in that regard than Drew Brees.
So I'm going to go ahead and give mine because I see Cam eyeing the microphone, and I know he's going to steal mine. So I'm going to say it first. I'm going to say the comparison is to a younger Kirk Cousins. Like you look at Kirk Cousins when he was younger with the Commanders, right? He's got that mobility. He's got that fire. He's got an arm. It's not the strongest, but it's strong enough. He's got that mental capacity to be able to handle whatever you throw at him, and his preparation reminds me a lot of what Bo Nix is doing. I think that with the right team around him, Bo Nix could be a Kirk Cousins-like quarterback.
Oof. But Kirk Cousins doesn't win championships, Mike.
How do we know that?
Well, he hasn't. Bill. He hasn't.
But I mean, like he's got a.
That's why I said when he's surrounded by the right people. Sure. Minnesota didn't give him a lot.
No.
Like offensively, he had Justin Jefferson, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Jefferson, and he has Stephon Diggs.
But I mean, still though, like I mean, like I think your best answer for that. Do I think he will? No, I don't think he will be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But your best answer to that debate is what's going to be happening in Atlanta.
Yeah, true.
Right, and it's the same thing you could make for Marino, right? Like, there's no argument that Marino is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Right.
But he didn't win a Super Bowl. Doesn't mean he wasn't great.
Phillip Rivers, same thing. I mean, like,
yeah.
You know,
Phillip Rivers.
That's Bill's favorite right there.
But, you know, I think that, you know, for me, one, I should preface it by this. Gage should at least thank me for the initial Brock Purdy comparison because I immediately texted him like about, you know, Bo Nix like very early in the process and was like, dude, you have to watch this Bo Nix kid because he actually does have some Brock Purdy to him. And then, you know, so I preface that with Brock Purdy. But the way I say this is like he's kind of got a few players I think are appropriate comparisons for him. And I think I've seen, you know, Jalen Hurts be thrown around a little bit, you know, for him in terms of Bo Nix, specifically with, you know, how you can be able to use him in a run style a little bit for, you know, for Bo. And I think that that's probably given right now with his early skill set. And Brock Purdy, I mean, like, and I think that where you really do see the Brock Purdy stuff is his anticipation. I should preface it this way: the Brock Purdy Drew Brees, because funny enough, in the Super Bowl last year, the announcers did mention that, Spagnuolo said that, who was it that Brock Purdy reminds you of a little bit? And he did say it was Drew Brees. So I kind of preface it that way. That's like a blend of, Brock Purdy and Drew Brees, and I think the one that has always kind of fascinated me in terms of a comparison, and I'm kind of been going on this comparison right now for Bo, and that is Dak Prescott. I think that I think that Dak Prescott is one that I actually really like a lot, because I think that one of the things that we really weren't following too often with Mississippi State Dak Prescott, because he wore number 15. He was a running quarterback. Like, who is he pre-snap? Who is he post-snap? He looks so much like Tebow in college. Who is this guy? And then he comes into the pros, and all of a sudden we find out that he's this cerebral quarterback, this really, really smart pre-snap quarterback, and he's got a lot of mobility to him. He can use his legs. He throws with anticipation. He throws a little bit, to where he can get his guys open. Maybe where I think it does fall in line where you do see a little bit, more than Dak is the intangibles. And I think that obviously given a rookie is, where it kind of tips the scale a little bit. But I think that he's got far more intangibles, I think, than Dak Prescott, because I think given that opportunity, he can win those big games for you that Dak Prescott maybe, down the line is not, unfortunately, winning right now with the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that the Dak Prescott comparison for me is one that I'm really fascinated with Bo.
Well, let's go back to like the New York Jets game, for example. Do you think that Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, you put them in that same situation, do you think that they're able to squeak out that win?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
And I think that stylistically you saw some of the same things, but I think that where he really kind of asserts himself a little bit more than Dak is those intangibles, like the how he's able to use the legs, how he's able to, smartly, decipher things and really hit the route that needs to be hit specifically from, what Sean's asking. So I think that, I think it's a pretty decent comparison for right now. I think what we could see is maybe a Dak Prescott situation where it goes even beyond a Dak Prescott to that Drew Brees superstar ceiling that we as fans have all been accustomed to hearing with Bo.
Yeah. So we go from talking about, we basically talked about the entire roster, weaknesses, strengths. And we talked a little bit about the Raiders game. We come out of that Raiders game second in the AFC West, and we are now 14th in the power rankings.
Ninth if you ask Bucky Brooks.
Yeah. So the NFL power rankings have us at 14. We moved up 6 spots. And now we're being talked about as a legitimate playoff contender because of our defense and the crackerback we got. I love that. I can't help it. I love that. So now we go into another division game with the Chargers. And I know Bill's going to be cheering for the Chargers, but we still have to give our predictions for it. With the Chargers coming off of a bye, how do you think the Broncos fare against the Chargers?
Why don't you start us off, Charger fan?
Yeah, thanks. That's Gage? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that says it all.
Come on, man. Justin Herbert's hair is nowhere near as glorious as mine.
Right?
I ain't got
I love it because it fits right on there, right?
You did a fantastic job.
Even the ears are in the right spot. It's Herbert, like he's got the ponytail sticking out of the back of the hat.
Herbert, take note.
There it is.
Watching my Head and Shoulders.
Hey, you should do a Troy Polamalu commercial, man. He has nothing on you, dude. Yeah, nothing on you.
Go ahead, Bill.
All right, going back to the prediction. Well, when a team's coming off a bye week, obviously they have an extra week to prepare. They obviously watched the game that we played against the Raiders. It's a divisional game. They're going to take what they saw and use that accordingly. Thank goodness the game is in Denver. We have the home crowd behind us and all that, although it didn't make a big deal when we played Pittsburgh. So take it for what it's worth. But it's a divisional game. I say the Broncos, given what no rookie quarterback has ever done in Denver other than Bo Nix, and that is win 3 straight games as a rookie. And he tied Elway with winning 2 on the road. So there's a little bit of moxie there with Bo Nix. I like it. I say Broncos win this game. Going to be close. I don't know if is Herbert 100%. You guys know if he's 100%?
Not yet.
It
Not
really doesn't even
okay.
matter. He's going to play.
He's never 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still say 100% or not, Denver's going to win this game. I say 23-17. And it's because of the defense.
Okay.
Again, it's going to be a defense.
Yep. I think that this Broncos team matches up really well with this Chargers team, especially with the injuries that they've been dealing with. Herbert's not 100%. Joey Bosa's not 100%. They've still got some issues on the offensive side of the ball. Their run game was looking good the first couple of weeks with J.K. Dobbins and then kind of fell off a cliff. Their offensive line has also been beat up, including their number 5 overall pick left tackle, Joe Alt. So coming off of bye week, that's certainly going to help matters, but I still don't think they're 100%. And I think that with the way this Broncos defense is playing, they should win the battle up front in the trenches like they have for the last couple of weeks, which has really propelled them far. I think that if Joey Bosa doesn't go or if he's limited, that's obviously going to help matters for the Broncos against the Chargers defense. One thing to keep an eye on is the Chargers do run the same defensive scheme that the Seattle Seahawks do. It's the Baltimore Ravens scheme that it gave Bo trouble. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. So I think that the offensive production might be a little bit more dampened than what it was against the Raiders. But I think that the Broncos defense, once again, is going to be able to propel them through and get them to a victory. I've actually got a very similar score to you, Bill. I've got them 24-17. Denver Broncos win. I think that they're going to be able to get by the skin of their teeth. They're going to be able to keep it a one-score game. The defense will play well enough. The offense will play well enough to win. They'll make enough plays. And I think that it's going to be a tougher matchup than the Raiders, but it's a divisional matchup at home. Justin Herbert never won in Denver before, and I think that trend continues.
Can I, again, before Cam just says anything, or Mike, can I interject a quick question? What do you think about the head coach matchup? You got Harbaugh, who's a mastermind, and you got Sean Payton. Does that matchup mean anything in relationship to how the game's going to be played?
I think it's pretty even keel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at that point, you basically have to look at the talent level on each team, right? Like we talk about how the wide receiving core for the Broncos isn't the strongest, but it sure is stronger than the Chargers.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, and I think that's where it's going to be a bit dicey. It's going to be a bit dicey for Justin Herbert because, he's basically making nothing out of chicken salad right now. I mean, with that wide receiving core. But I think that for the Broncos case, and with what we saw, at times with the Raiders, they can't get lost. I think that needs to be reiterated. They can't get lost like they did in the beginning part of the game. Like if they do that, specifically in this game with Justin Herbert, it's going to get away from them fast because and that's the biggest comparison between the Raiders game and the Chargers game is if the Chargers are up 10-0, it's going to get ugly in a hurry, I feel like, for that. So the Broncos cannot afford that. And I think that you got to be able to create a lot of pressure. You got to be able to create that pressure on Justin Herbert. You've got to also get turnovers. You've got to create, continue this trend of turnovers a little bit, force Justin Herbert to be aggressive, but aggressive to where it's putting it into your window where you can take advantage and execute those turnovers. I think that that's going to be one of the recipes to success. And I think offensively, kind of to Gage's point, it's like they've got to play within themselves, specifically given the fact that this is the same type of scheme that they will be facing. Even to that point, this is also a top 5, top 7 defense. I mean, like, this is a really, really good Chargers defense, specifically up front. And obviously a little bit on that back end. So these, kind of middle of the pack wide receivers and Cortland Sutton, they've got to be able to be, winning their matchups. They've got to be, beyond their P's and Q's. I mean, like they've got to be able to succeed and, release off the ball with no problem. I think that, given the fact it is at home, helps the Broncos a little bit. And so it's hard for me to say, but I think that, right now, I'll kind of go with my prediction of what I had going into the season. And I think I had them, losing this game. So I have the Broncos losing this game. They do. I think I had them splitting with the Chargers, but I think I have them losing this one. So I'll go with that. And I will say that they lose 23-20.
So I have the Broncos still starting slow in the first quarter, maybe halfway through the second quarter. I do think that our wide receivers match up fantastic with their corners. I think that even with the backups in at the offensive line, it's changed enough to where Javonte Williams is able to get loose. And I think that the defense of the Broncos is going to give Justin Herbert more problems than the defense is going to give, or the Chargers is going to give Bo Nix. I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's going to be 20-17 Broncos.
You don't think Joey Bosa is going to get loose on Bo Nix? Okay.
As long as Matt Garrett holds up.
Yeah. Well, it's a big if.
Well, even, to Bo's credit, he's really, really good at avoiding sacks. So,
Joey Bosa is not the same as Max Crosby.
That's true. Max Crosby was a beast in that game.
And I'm more worried about Khalil Mack than I am Joey Bosa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Bowles is going to be the one who's going to have to deal with Mack mostly.
So a lot of holding penalties.
Oh, gee. Yeah.
That could be a problem.
All right, so that is our guess for the upcoming game this weekend. Make sure you check that out. And I want to leave you guys with one last thought that I found on Twitter that I found it was interesting. We probably already know it, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. Did you know that when you look at the trade that the Broncos made with the Saints to get Sean Payton, we traded a first-round pick, which ended up to be Brian Bressie, and we traded them a second-round pick, and that turned out to be Kool-Aid McKinstry. We got Sean Payton and a third-round pick that turned out to be Riley Moss. So who got the better of that trade?
Denver. Definitely. No question.
Saints got two good players, but
True.
Denver got Riley Moss, who's looking like a shutdown corner right now.
You get a guy that's nicknamed the Crackerback, and you know you win that trade.
Yeah, I mean, and you also get your coach. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I think it was even Gage and I was like, I could care less if it was a first-round pick. Like, your coach is a foundational piece of your franchise, and and you get that, and then you get arguably a shutdown corner, that you traded up for, and it seems like it's paid off. Like, dude, I mean, Riley Moss is the truth, and I love the fact he did it in the throwback uniforms.
So good,
it was great.
Chef's permanent uniforms all the time. Just go to the 77s permanently.
I do agree. I did like those. I do remember those from 77 when I watched that game against the Raiders.
All right, so that's going to do it for us. I'm pretty sure we've covered everything. Is there anything else that we want to cover?
Just as far as Bronco notes, I don't know if we touched on Lavelle Bailey to the 53, right?
Lavelle Bailey, and then somebody we hadn't heard of.
Yeah, they signed a center I haven't heard of before. They signed A.T. Perry, and there was another one. They cut Salvon Ahmed and Caden Davis. Oh, no, they brought back Caden Davis. Yeah, they brought him back. They cut Salvon Ahmed, and they cut Quentin Newsom from the practice squad.
Okay. All right, so that's going to about do it for us. We want to thank everybody in the chat that joined us. It's always awesome when we can get your comments and respond. Make sure you check out all of the shows on the MHRT Network, and not only the MHRT Network. Make sure you go check out Gage Madrid at Broncos Syndicate. What? I'm doing my
spiel. Should be back this week.
Listen.
Audric has to
Should've
make
said
sure
that earlier.
That's one more. Just remembered.
Okay, so we want to thank everybody for joining us on the show today. Everybody in the chat, it's great to be chatting with you and get your questions and answer them. Make sure you check out all the shows on the MHRT Network, and not only the MHRT Network. Make sure you check out Gaze Madrid on Broncos Syndicate. Okay, just want to make sure you weren't interjecting again. Oh yeah, we get the fireworks. We got shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we have the Neighborhood on Sunday with a pregame and a postgame given to us by the Orange and Blue Network that we are partnering with. They have a show going on right now. Right after that is going to be Sports Nonsense, so make sure you check that out.
Where they truly talk nonsense.
They really do. I think it's WWE today. I don't know. And Cam is on Wednesdays with Mainly Broncos, so check that out. Nobody cares about Bill. Make sure you he's got a show.
Nobody.
He's got his show on Friday.
It's all good.
So make sure you check all that out. And if you would be so kind, if you don't want to subscribe, that's fine. I'm not going to force you yet. But please hit that thumbs up button on the videos. It is very, very helpful, and it's absolutely free and takes about a millisecond. So please go ahead and do that. We will see you guys later. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. Peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame.